The moon had been silent for 3 nights. That was the first sign something was terribly wrong. In our pack, silence from the moon was never mercy. It was mourning. The night he died, the forest didn't whisper his name. It screamed it. I still remember the way the wind howled through the pine trees, carrying the metallic tang of blood that didn't belong to prey. I remember the sound of my own heartbeat, a frantic drum that refused to stop, even when his did. His name was Kael Varyn, the Alpha King of the Bloodmoon pack. My mate, my curse, my impossible love. And for 3 nights, he lay cold in the sacred crypt beneath the mountain, his wolf trapped between death and the pull of my voice. I had been warned not to go there. "Let the dead rest, Lyra," Elder Runa had said, gripping my arm with her trembling fingers. "You disturb the Alpha's peace, the curse will wake too." But peace? Kael never knew peace. Not in life, and not in death. The last time I saw him, his eyes were still open, clouded but fierce, as if daring even death to take him. I hadn't screamed. I hadn't cried. I had simply stood there, hands covered in his blood, whispering to a body that couldn't answer. Now, 3 nights later, I was walking back into that crypt, alone. The path to the Bloodstone cavern was forbidden to Omegas like me, but I was done obeying rules made by wolves who'd never known love. I could still feel the mate mark on my neck, faint, flickering, like a dying ember refusing to go out. It burned every time I thought of him. I carried nothing but a candle and the dagger he had once given me. "For when you need to be strong," he'd said, pressing the hilt into my hand the night he crowned me his Luna in secret. Now it was just cold metal against colder skin. The crypt was carved into the mountain's heart, stone walls slick with moisture, the air thick with the scent of ash and old magic. Torches burned low, casting long shadows that twisted across the floor. The Bloodmoon crest gleamed faintly on the sealed chamber door. I hesitated. Even the walls seemed to breathe here, exhaling centuries of grief. When I touched the door, frost crept along my fingers, like the mountain itself wanted me gone. "Kael," I whispered. No answer. I pressed harder. The door groaned open, and there he was, the Alpha King, my mate, my ghost, lying on the stone slab, wrapped in black furs, his body still as carved marble. The crimson mark of his lineage, the crescent wolf, glowed faintly on his shoulder, but his chest didn't rise. His lips were pale, the kind of pale that made you want to breathe life into them. My legs gave out beneath me. I fell beside him, candle trembling in my hand. "I told you I'd follow you anywhere," I whispered, brushing my fingers against his cold cheek. "You didn't have to make it here first." The silence was unbearable. Only the soft hiss of melting wax filled the room, then a sound, a low, distant rumble, like thunder buried under earth. The ground beneath me quivered. The candlelight flickered violently. The bloodstone above the crypt began to pulse, glowing faint red. "No," I breathed. "That's not possible. It wasn't supposed to respond to the dead." The bloodstone was the moon's heart. It only answered the living blood of the Alpha line. Unless he wasn't completely gone. I dropped the candle and pressed both palms against his chest. "Kael, if you can hear me, come back." Nothing. Tears blurred my vision. They fell onto his skin, tiny droplets that steamed on contact, as if my grief burned hotter than life itself. I leaned close, my lips trembling. "Don't you dare leave me. Not like this. Not after everything." Still silence. Then something ancient stirred in the air, a cold draft that carried whispers. The same words over and over. "The bond is unbroken." "Call him," my heart pounded. I took a shaky breath, closed my eyes, and let the wolf inside me rise. The part of me that was bound to him by blood and fate. When I howled, it wasn't a sound of grief. It was a summoning, raw, desperate, eternal. The sound tore from my throat like it had claws, echoing through the crypt and into the veins of the mountain. The bloodstone flared, bright crimson, then white, and Kael's chest rose, just once. A single shuddering breath, Then again, I froze. My heart stopped and restarted in the same instant. Kael? His fingers twitched. Then, his eyes snapped open, glowing with feral, molten gold light. He inhaled sharply, the air slicing through his lungs like fire. His wolf had heard me. But the moment his gaze met mine, I knew something was wrong. He didn't look at me like his Luna. He looked at me like prey. I stumbled back, trembling. Kate, it's me, Lyra. He sat up slowly, his movements animalistic, unnatural. The furs slid off his bare torso, revealing the deep scars across his chest, the wounds that had killed him. They were gone now, Lyra. His voice was hoarse, layered with something dark. You called me back. Yes, I whispered. I couldn't. He moved faster than I could blink. His hand shot out, gripping my throat. Not hard enough to choke, but firm enough to remind me he wasn't human. You shouldn't have, he growled. His eyes weren't just gold now. They burned red at the edges. His wolf wasn't fully his. Something else had come back with him. And as the Bloodstone cracked above us, I realized what Elder Runa had meant. Kael Varyn wasn't just back from the dead. He had brought death with him. The crypt walls trembled as his breath filled the air again. Sharp, ragged, alive. But it wasn't Kael's breath. Not truly. Something in the rhythm was wrong. Too harsh, too uneven. It sounded like the growl of something that didn't belong to this world anymore. He was staring at me, unblinking, his hand still around my throat. The warmth that once lived in his touch was gone. His palm was ice, and his pulse... Gods, his pulse was thunderous, erratic, too strong for a body that had been dead 3 nights. Kael, I whispered, the word trembling out of me like prayer and warning both. You're alive. He tilted his head slightly, eyes narrowing, studying me the way a predator studies movement before a kill. Alive. His voice was fractured, layered, like there were 2 of him speaking at once, Kael and something beneath. Or cursed. The question sliced through the silence. I swallowed, forcing my voice to stay steady. You were gone. I called you back. His eyes flickered gold again, softer this time, as if the human part of him, the Alpha I loved, was clawing its way through the darkness. For a fleeting heartbeat I saw him, the man who used to laugh under moonlight, the one who'd promised me that even death couldn't break a bond forged by the moon. Then it vanished. He released me abruptly, and I stumbled backward, clutching my throat, coughing. The air between us shimmered with a cold so deep it ached in my bones. He rose from the stone slab. Every movement was slow, deliberate, animalistic. The faint light of the Bloodstone reflected off the scars across his chest. Scars that should have never healed. What have you done, Lyra? The way he said my name made my heart twist. It wasn't love in his voice. It was hunger. I called you, I said, voice breaking. The Bloodstone answered. The bond, he repeated, low and dangerous. You used it to drag me from the dark. I flinched at the venom in his tone. You left me no choice. You died, Kael. They took you from me. They took me because I was already cursed. He snapped, and the torches along the wall flared violently, shadows leaping like wild things. You don't understand what you've done. He stepped closer, and the ground beneath his bare feet cracked. Tiny fractures spiderwebbing across the stone floor, glowing faint red. The Bloodmoon's power, it was in him again, but twisted, darker, corrupted. I tried to step back, but the air itself resisted. The whole crypt pulsed with him, every breath, every whisper of movement sinking to his presence. His voice dropped, rough and haunted. When you called me, something else answered too. My blood ran cold. What do you mean? He looked past me, toward the sealed tunnel leading out of the cavern. His nostrils flared, as if scenting the air for threats. The void. The place between death and life, he murmured. It doesn't release what it takes without a price. He turned back to me, eyes glowing again, faint tendrils of crimson light spiraling through the gold. It gave me back my body. But it wants my wolf. I took a hesitant step forward. Then we'll find a way to fix it. The elders, the healers, He cut me off with a dark laugh that wasn't his. It rolled through the chamber like thunder, echoing off the walls until even the air trembled. "There's no fixing death, little wolf." He reached up, brushing his thumb across my lower lip. My breath caught. The gesture was familiar, tender even, but his eyes stayed cold. "You shouldn't have brought me back." I wanted to speak. I wanted to tell him I'd rather burn the world than live in it without him. But when I looked into his eyes, I saw it. The war inside him. The Alpha King. And the thing that had followed him back. The first time I saw Kael shift, it had been beautiful. His wolf was silver and gold, enormous, radiant under the moon, a creature of power and grace. But now, when the first tremor ran through his body, it was nothing like that. His muscles convulsed, his jaw clenched, and a deep, guttural growl tore from his throat. I stumbled backward as his bones cracked, reshaping. His shadow lengthened, stretching across the walls. But the wolf that emerged wasn't silver. It was black. Pitch black, with streaks of crimson pulsing like molten veins beneath its fur. Its eyes were not the golden light of Kael's soul. They were blood red. "Kael?" I whispered, but there was no answer. Only the growl. He prowled toward me, claws scraping the stone, his breath misting in the cold air. The scent of death clung to him, sharp, metallic, ancient. Every instinct in me screamed to run. But I didn't. I couldn't. Instead, I knelt. "You know me," I whispered, voice shaking. "Even if the darkness has you, you know me." The wolf hesitated, head tilting slightly. His ears flicked, catching my voice. "Come back to me, Kael," he snarled, low, torn, conflicted. Then, with a violent shake, he slammed his paw into the floor beside me. The stone shattered under the impact, sending shards flying. One grazed my cheek, drawing blood. The scent hit him instantly. His entire body froze. That single drop of blood, mine, seemed to awaken something deeper. His gaze snapped to my face, and I saw the wolf's pupils dilate. For a terrifying second, I thought he'd attack. Instead, he staggered back, growling, shaking his head like he was fighting an invisible force. The crimson veins beneath his fur dimmed. He looked at me again. And this time, the gold flickered back into his eyes. "Lyra." His voice, broken, raw, came from the wolf's throat, echoing in my mind through the mate bond. "You have to run." Tears blurred my vision. "I won't leave you." His growl deepened, torn between anger and desperation. "If I lose control again, then I'll remind you who you are," I whispered fiercely. "You're Kael Varyn, Alpha of the Bloodmoon, my mate, my heart." For a moment there was silence. Then the wolf took a trembling step back, as if retreating from me, from himself. He turned, leaping up toward the crypt's exit. The stone door burst open under the force, and he vanished into the night, leaving the scent of frost and blood in his wake. I fell to my knees, the echo of his howl slicing through the darkness. It wasn't the howl of the Alpha I knew. It was something broken, angry, hungry. The bloodstone above me dimmed, its last light flickering out. I pressed my hand over the mark on my neck. It pulsed faintly, proof that our bond still lived, even if the world thought him dead again. He was alive. But something had followed him back, and as the cold crept back into the crypt, a whisper rode the wind, words in a tongue older than wolves. One life for one soul. "The dead do not rise without debt." I looked up, eyes burning. "Then I'll pay it," I whispered. "Whatever it takes." The crypt door was still vibrating when I stumbled through it, the night air slapping my face with a wet, cold hand. The mountain exhaled frost down its throat, as if spitting me back out into a world that had tilted 1 degree off its axis. Somewhere ahead, trees bled darkness into one another, and the wind threaded itself with a sound I knew better than my own heartbeat. A wolf running hard, not for prey, but from himself. "Kael," I breathed to the pines, to the slick ribs of rock, to the moon that watched without blinking. "Don't you disappear." The path cut a sharp line beneath my feet. Roots knuckled up from the earth like warnings. Pine needles soaked through the leather of my boots. The dagger he'd given me knocked softly against my thigh with each stride. A small memory of the night he had whispered. For when you need to be strong, strong. The word tasted like iron. At the base of the mountain, the trees drew close, crowding into a cathedral where the vaulted ceiling was threaded with branches, and the stars were beads caught in a black net. My breath made ghosts in the air. The mate bond burned low as an ember, somewhere between my ribs. A tug that wasn't a direction so much as a compulsion. Not north, not south. Him I let it lead. The forest was not hushed. It never truly was. It creaked and murmured and sighed, the way bodies do when tired. But tonight, under the last quarter of a reluctant moon, it seemed to say his name with every sound it made. Kael. A branch scraped another. Kael. An owl blinked sharply from a hollow Kael. Even the stream that cut like a bright scar through the understory babbled it. Kael, Kael, Kael. Too fast, too breathless, like a warning. I crossed the stream where ice glassed the stones. The water grabbed my ankles like cold hands. Somewhere to my left, a fox yipped twice and then fell quiet. The ember in my chest flickered, pulsed, then flared. He'd changed direction. Or something had pushed him. "Don't run from me," I whispered, as if he could hear the words between my teeth. "I didn't drag you back just to lose you to the dark." The scent came next, so faint a beta wouldn't have caught it, but the bond lifted it to me like a secret pressed against my ear. Frost. Pine sap. The metallic ghost of old blood, and beneath it, burned into my memory and marrow both, the scent that meant home. Kael. I quickened, branches snapping in my wake, wet leaves slapping my calves. When the ground pitched down, I slid, grabbing for trunks to steady myself, bark biting my palms. The forest here grew wild and old. Wolf-bone white stones thrust up through the earth like the ribs of some buried beast. Runes, half swallowed by lichen, whispered from their edges. I'd heard stories of this place. The Eye's Edge. A circle the elders said was a hinge between worlds, where the veil thinned and the moon's gaze cut to the bone. My candle had died in the crypt, but the forest had its own light. Luminous fungi clung to rotting logs, painting the air in sickly blue. Moth wings flashed like coins. And ahead, the faintest pulse, a red strobe between the trees, beating in time with the frantic rhythm under my skin. I crept to the edge of a clearing and saw him. Half shifted, he knelt in a ring of stones, breath shearing in and out, the bones of his hands flexing between human and wolf, claws and fingers arguing over the same territory. Red traced under his skin like rivers seen through thin ice. The fur along his forearms was night dark, bristling. His eyes glowed with that terrible, beautiful light. The gold of Kael fighting up from a pit, ragged at the edges with crimson. "Kael," I said softly. The sound of his name left my mouth like I was breaking it. His head snapped toward me. The gold flared. The red hissed. For a heartbeat, I saw 1,000 memories stacked. Him laughing under a midsummer storm, rain carving paths down his throat, him leaning against the railing outside my window at dawn, his breath fogging the air as if he could warm the whole world, him crowned not by ceremony, but by the way wolves stilled when he entered a room, and then a different image elbowed in, him carried, pale and open-eyed, down into the mountain while the Bloodstone hummed with grief. Lyra. The word came rough, like he'd grown thorns around it. "You shouldn't be here. You ran," I said. "I follow." "I told you to run." A flicker of pain crossed his face. It wasn't for himself. It was for me. That gave me the courage to step into the ring of stones, he growled. It was a low thing, like the ground clearing its throat, leaves jittered, lifting in a circle before settling like a crown around us. "This place is old," he said dully. "It remembers every vow spoken on it. Every lie, too." "Then let it remember this," I said. "I will not leave you." He squeezed his eyes shut. "The thing that followed me back loves vows. It eats them." "The void?" I asked. "You said it once, your wolf." He shuddered. A full body rippling that made the red lines under his skin flare to a furious brightness. The scent in the air changed. The frost-sharp edge of it turned toxic, sweet like overripe fruit, like rot wearing perfume. My mouth filled with saliva, a natural reaction to disgust. "Not wants," he said, voice scraping as if used against glass. "Owns." It waited at the threshold when you called me. It hooked a claw in and told me the price. 1 life for 1 soul. I thought it would take mine. He looked up then, eyes lit with a grief so wild it felt like standing too close to a fire. It changed the terms when it scented you through me. The clearing shrank until there was no room left to breathe. Me. It knows you'll pay any debt, he said. That's its weakness, and its weapon. I dropped into a crouch in front of him. I wanted to touch him, but I hovered my hands a hair above his skin, letting warmth travel the shortest distance it could without contact. We won't bargain on its terms. It isn't bargaining. He opened his palm. The lines across it were not lines anymore, but runes. The same as on the stones, etched by some internal fire. It is writing. The runes on his skin were a script older than our pack's songs, older than the moon's cycles we painted on our ceilings. I knew none of it and all of it at once. The meanings curled at the edges of my mind. Death, debt, door. What did you see there? I asked quietly. In the dark. His mouth twitched, the shape memory makes when suddenly handed a voice. Cold. Not the cold of night. The cold of emptiness. Sound that looked like a tunnel. The counting of something with no fingers. Hands that weren't hands. Weights placed on me, one after another. And voices, not many. Just one speaking like it was a choir. 3 nights to cool the blood. 3 nights to wash the name. 3 nights to teach the bond to beg. Teach the bond to beg, I repeated, fury and fear plating themselves in my throat. It thought I'd crawl to it. You howled, he said, and a shadow of wonder crossed his face. Blessedly human. You called like a blade calls a wound. I followed the cut. That thing followed me. Something moved in the trees behind him. The trembling of small things stops all at once when a big thing decides to draw breath. My hand found the dagger's hilt. Don't, he said quickly, the gold bright as warning flares. Weapons make it curious. What is it? I whispered. He tilted his head, listening to a frequency I couldn't hear. A hollow that learned a name and wanted a body to wear it. A debt keeper that likes to go hunting. It likes forests, places with roots. Then it chose the wrong one. I let my wolf uncoil a little, hot and clean. These roots belong to us. Not tonight, said a voice that wasn't a voice at all. It slid under the bark of every tree and spoke through the rings. It lifted the fungi's glow into symbols. It braided wind and rot and moonlight into a mouth. The clearing rim darkened, a circle drawing itself with us inside it. The stones bled their lichen. The runes brightened, casting our faces in a blood haze. I stood. Instinct snarled. Wolves are made for enemies with breath and bones. Not this. Show yourself, I said to the air. So eager, it murmured, affectionate as a knife. You called once. Call again. Your throat knows the price. No, Kael said, rising with me, his body settling somewhere between forms, a terrible grace pulling him tall. I call the price. I set the name. I am Kael Varyn, Alpha. Were, the hollow cooed. Were is the word for things that warmed a bed and do not anymore. You died, sweet wolf. She purchased the echo. Echoes don't lead packs. You failed, I said, every syllable dipped in defiance. He didn't stay cold. A wind-like breath drawn in mock surprise combed the clearing. You are bright. Small light burns best in dark jars. Kael's hand found mine, hot where the red ran, cool where the gold held. The runes on his palm pressed into my skin, a brand promising and begging at once. The bond flared, not an ember, but a flame tasting the corners of a room it has not yet decided to burn. What debt, I said, does the void ask? 1 life for 1 soul, it sang. The trees repeated it in different pitches until the forest became a choir. Give me a heartbeat I have not counted, and I will forget the wolf. Take mine, I said. Kael's growl broke the ground's surface, new cracks spidering outward. No, the forest laughed. It sounded like glass rain. It already belongs to him, it said. You tied it long ago with that mark prey wear, thinking it makes them hunters. I do not take what has been eaten. The mark at my throat burned as if it had teeth. Then you lied, I said through that scalding pain. You can't have what you promise. Debt can be paid with equal coin, it hummed, unbothered. A queen for a king, A firstborn for a firstborn, a heart for a heart. Your pack keeps many hearts in tidy rows. Many names. I can help you choose. It was trying to make me the blade. That was the rot's sweetest trick. Make you cut yourself by giving you the choice of knife. No, I said again, and my voice was steady enough to surprise me. Your price is not ours to meet. Something heavy leaned against the world then, pressed until the air thinned. Kael flinched. The red in him warred with the gold. I could feel it as if my nerves braided into his, static skittering across my skin, the taste of old pennies at the back of my throat. Stop, I said. He is not your door. He is my threshold, it purred. And I am patient. The hunger under his skin is mine to turn. When he eats, he will eat in my name. When he howls, it will be through my teeth. Kael's fingers tightened on mine. Lyra, he said, low and bleached with effort. Anchor me. How? My mouth had already asked while my body remembered. The night he crowned me with secrets instead of jewels. The press of his chest against my palm where his heart hammered. The way he had whispered, "You are the thing I tie my teeth to when blood smells too good." Like then, he said, and leaned in until his breath misted my lips. I sheathed the dagger. I lifted my free hand and laid it flat against the hot, rune-etched plane of his chest. The heat ate at my palm like frostbite in reverse. The runes flared, and the clearing's strange light rushed in to drink us. I did not pray to the moon. I did not ask permission. I gave him my name the way rivers give their banks, relentlessly. Kael Varyn, I said, voice steady even as my bones felt hollowed by the thing listening. Come back. The bond surged, a bright, brilliant current. The red in him brightened to blinding, and then guttered under the weight of his name spoken through my mouth. His eyes went gold, clean and whole for one exquisite heartbeat. The forest hissed like steam on iron. Always, he breathed. The ring of stones shattered, not theatrically, not as a single explosion, but in a cascade, one breaking the next and the next, until the circle became a snarl of pale shards at our feet. The nearest trees groaned, bark sloughing off in curling strips that revealed pale wood inscribed with a single word, repeated down their lengths. Kael. The forest remembered him. It wrote him. It would not forget. The hollow drew itself tighter, anger compressing into cold. Names are good tinder, it said silkily. They burn brightest at the end. The ground beneath the shards liquefied into shadow. Shapes unhooked themselves from the tree line. Wolves without fur, outlines packed with night. Their eyes little moons with nothing behind them. Revenants, not bodies, permissions. The first prowled into the ring and set its knot paws on the stones. They smoked. Kael stepped in front of me, shoulders broad as a door barred with a plank. Stay behind, he said. No, I said automatically, because a habit of defiance can save your life when fear tries to make you small. But I did slide to his left, our hips a touch apart, our shadows braided together. The first revenant lunged. Kael met it like a storm meets a tree. Head on, joyous to have something to break. His half-shifted form hit with enough force to knock sparks off night. Claws found nothing that should have been flesh and yet tore, and where he tore, the shadow screamed without sound and bled a darkness that steamed when it hit the ruined stones. Another slid by, slick as oil, fast as remorse. I pivoted, dagger in hand. If weapons made it curious, then let curiosity draw it to me instead of him. I slashed where neck might be. The blade bit, and the shadow shrieked as if I'd salted a wound. It recoiled, edges smoking. Silver! Kael barked between blows, and in spite of everything, part of me laughed. You gave me this, I said, parrying something that wanted to be teeth. You gave me everything sharp I own. The fight was wrong. We were not cutting meat. We were cutting absence. But blood is clever. It learns new ways to remember itself. The third shadow circled and leapt. I stepped into it, burying the dagger hilt deep in its middle, and it folded in half around the blade as if belly laughed too hard and couldn't breathe. It dissolved the way fog does when sun remembers it has a job. The hollow sighed, disappointed. You make work of play. Go count someone else's heartbeats, I said, chest heaving. The ground steadied. The remaining shadows flowed back between the trees, unwilling to test the stones or the bond again. The clearing's light dimmed a fraction. The fungi's pallor softened. Still, the taste of its attention clung to my tongue. "This won't stop," Kael said, voice hoarse. The runes under my palm cooled to embers. "It will nibble at the edges. It will make small hungers big. It will ask for easy trades in hard hours. Then we starve it," I said. "We give it nothing," he swayed. It was a small motion, but small motions can be cliff edges when you're too near them. I slid my body under his arm until his weight found me, heavy and electric. "We make it a winter," I said, "and we see how long it likes to go without." A twig snapped at the edge of the clearing. I turned, dagger angled low, Kael pulling me tighter, scent flaring. The clean, dangerous smell he wore when hunting. Two figures stepped from the black, shadowed at first, then catching a spill of sour moonlight. I knew the first by the way his shoulders telegraphed suspicion before his face did. Beta Dorian. The second wore the hood of a seer, thin hands knitted in front of her belly, beads of bone clicking softly, the sound of a rosary made of wolves. Elder Runa. Her eyes slid over the shattered stones, the scorched bark, the place where the shadow had bled nothing. They settled on Kael last, and something like a sob shook her old iron frame. "By the moon." Dorian's mouth flattened. He did not sob. He had not sobbed at Kael's bier either. He wore his grief like a blade, kept sharp and visible to make men forget how and where it cut. His gaze flicked to my hand splayed across Kael's chest, to the mark at my throat, to the place where the forest had written the Alpha's name. "What have you done?" he said, not really asking. "I brought him home," I said. "You opened the door," he countered, grim. "To something that does not close for free." Runa lifted a hand, a small quelling. "Hush, boy." She stepped closer, toes careful on the stones, as if she felt them listening still. Her eyes were knives and rain. "The price will ask itself whether we look at it or not." She looked at Kael, grief and duty braided in her mouth. "You died 3 nights. You were measured. You were found and photographed by the dark. She turned those knives to me, and she called you back with a wolf's cry that broke a bone none of us knew we had. Tell me how to pay it," I said. Dorian flinched. Runa closed her eyes. "Child," she said, and the word sounded like the opposite of what it meant. Old and heavy. "Debt is not all weights and numbers. Sometimes it is a story that wants a specific ending." "Change it," Kael rasped. Her eyes opened, moon pale. "We can try," she said simply. "But not here. The forest is writing. It will record our plans if we make them loudly." She glanced at the trees, at the vertical, clean-carved Kael. "And we have already inked much." Dorian frowned. "The pack is preparing the rites," he said. "We burned the black candles. We read his name backward and forward. We placed the crown on the stone and drew lots for who would carry it to the river. If they see him like this—" "They won't," Runa said sharply. "Not until we unhook him from the hunger. Not until we know what teeth the void intends to grow." She looked at me. "Can you hold him?" "As long as my lungs know how," I said. The old woman smiled at that, small, sad, proud. "Good," she said, "because there is an old path behind the old path, one only alphas and fools walk. It leads to a place where debts are weighed against names, and names are weighed against knives. We'll go there. We'll ask for an ending that isn't a grave." Dorian's jaw flexed. "And if the path asks a blood toll?" "Then it will get blood," Runa said dryly. "But not the heart it thinks it likes. We don't feed beasts. We bargain with beasts until they choke on our terms." She turned, gesturing briskly, beads clicking. "Come. Dawn will find us if we linger, and dawn has a way of making impossible things look like lies. We need the dark to carry what we saw." I looked at Kael. The red under his skin had dimmed to a warning light. The gold in his eyes was tired, but there. He pressed his forehead to mine just for a second, our breaths finding the same winter. "Thank you," he said so quietly it might have been a thought. "For what?" I whispered. "For calling my name like it was a road home." I smiled like a wound closing. "Then follow it," we moved. The forest shifted, making a narrow, mean path where there had not been one before. Runa's beads did not jingle now. They counted. Dorian's gaze scraped the trees, searching for enemies. I tucked myself under Kael's arm and set my pace to his. The shattered stones watched us go, their broken faces bright with runes. Behind us, the hollow exhaled, the sound so faint it could have been mistaken for a falling leaf. One life for one soul, it had promised. I felt the bond pulse under my sternum, stubborn and bright. Not a leash, a line. I put my free hand over the mark at my throat and pressed until it hurt. The pain steadied me. Let the forest remember his name, I thought. Let it write it and say it and sing it until even the void grows bored of listening. We would find the old path. We would ask for another ending. We would make the dark keep its own teeth. And if it asked us to beg, we would teach it how wolves prey, with our feet set, our jaws locked, our eyes on each other, and our howls angling toward a moon that knows the difference between hunger and love. The forest swallowed us whole. The path Runa promised was not really a path, more a memory of one, beaten once by hooves or prayers and forgotten. It moved like water, turning where it pleased. The trees leaned close, their bark glazed with old frost, their branches sewn with bits of silver moss that caught our torchlight and returned it like the gaze of watchful eyes. Kael walked ahead of me, every step a negotiation between strength and ruin. His shoulders still carried the posture of an alpha, upright, commanding, but the tremor at the edge of his breath betrayed him. Each time he stumbled, the forest reacted. Frost spread across the roots, a reflex of his body fighting the hunger underneath his skin. Runa and Dorian followed behind, their whispers weaving through the crunch of leaves. The old seer's beads clicked like small bones counting down. The path of knives, she murmured half to herself. It will ask for cuts, not blood. Every truth sharper than the last. I didn't ask what that meant. Some questions deserved silence. We walked until the forest thinned and the air changed. The scent of pine surrendered to stone and snow. Ahead, the moon poured its ghostlight over a valley carved in half by a ravine. A bridge waited there, if it could be called that. It was made of blades, thousands of them, buried end to end in ice, their edges catching moonlight and throwing it back in fragments. The wind that passed through it sang, a cold metallic hymn that raised the hairs on my arms. Runa stopped at the edge. Here, she said, planting her staff in the ground. The path begins, Dorian frowned. That's suicide. Runa's gaze didn't waver. It's the old way. The wolves who cross it are weighed by what they bleed on the way. If the bond between them is true, the blades will turn to snow. If not, they cut until one falls. My throat tightened. And if both fall? Runa's eyes met mine. Then the debt keeps the souls it wants. Kael's hand brushed mine, rough and trembling. You don't have to do this. I turned to him, forcing a smile. I brought you back from death, Kael. You think a few knives will scare me? He almost smiled back, almost. This isn't bravery, Lyra, it's madness. Then we'll be mad together. He exhaled, a shaky sound halfway between love and surrender. Stay close. We stepped onto the bridge. The first blade groaned under his boot, then under mine. The wind howled up from the ravine, carrying whispers that sounded suspiciously like laughter. Every step was a gamble. The metal shivered, edges catching our ankles. Thin lines of red bloomed and vanished, the wounds freezing before they could bleed. Halfway across, the whispering began in earnest. You called him back. It hissed through the wind. You broke the moon's count. Kael stiffened, eyes flashing. Ignore it. The voice shifted, its tone honeyed. He knows he's not the same. Look at him. He wears death like a second skin. I clenched my jaw. You're not real. Oh, I am, the voice purred. I am every secret you hid when you begged the Bloodstone to answer. You didn't call him back because you loved him. You called him back because you were afraid to be the one left behind. I stopped. The wind pressed against me, cold fingers prying at old guilt. The bridge trembled beneath us. Kael turned, his face shadowed by moonlight. Lyra, don't listen. But the voice wasn't finished. It slithered closer, curling through the air. Tell him. Tell him about the night before the war. Tell him whose blood you traded for his life. The world tilted. My breath hitched. No, Kael's brow furrowed. What is it talking about? I shook my head. Not now. Please, Kael. The blades beneath us hissed, and the next step carved a thin red smile across his calf. He winced but didn't falter. "The bridge feeds on lies," he said quietly. "If it's asking, it already knows." My stomach twisted. "Kael," he reached out, gripping my wrist. "Tell me." I closed my eyes. The memory came like a wound reopening. The night before the Bloodmoon War, the seer said you wouldn't survive, that the dark would take your heart. My voice cracked. "I begged the Bloodstone to protect you. It said it would, if I offered a life in your place." Kael's eyes widened. "I chose my sister," I whispered. The words burned my tongue like acid. "She was sick, Kael, already fading. I thought it was mercy. The Bloodstone took her that night. Her heart stopped before dawn." The silence that followed was worse than the wind. Kael's hand dropped from mine. He swallowed hard. "You gave the stone her life for mine. I didn't understand the cost. You understood enough to pay it." The blades flared beneath our feet, glowing with heat now, the metal singing like it had tasted fresh blood. The ravine below roared. I reached for him, but he stepped back. "Kael, please, why didn't you tell me?" "Because you would have let yourself die." His eyes burned gold again, fury and heartbreak braided together. "Maybe I should have." The bridge lurched, a sheet of frost cracking under us. Kael stumbled, his heel catching on a jagged edge. I lunged forward, grabbing his wrist before he could fall. His body hung over the ravine, the blades beneath him dripping with his blood. "Let me go," he said, voice low and broken. "Never." For a heartbeat, the wind stilled. Our bond burned between us, fierce, bright, alive. I met his gaze and spoke through it. "I would trade 1,000 lives for yours again." The blades beneath us shimmered, the light in them shifting from red to white. The wind howled once more, then quieted. Slowly, painfully, the metal underfoot began to melt, turning soft, like snow under the first touch of spring. Kael gasped as the edge beneath him gave way. I hauled him up, and we collapsed onto the final stretch of the bridge. The blades dissolved completely, leaving a path of silver frost behind us. Runa's voice reached us faintly from the far side. "The truth cuts, but it heals clean." Kael lay beside me, breathing hard. His blood steamed against the frost. For a moment, neither of us spoke. Then his hand found mine again, tentative, trembling. "I don't forgive you," he said quietly. I nodded. "I don't ask you to." He turned his head, eyes softening. "But I understand now why the Bloodstone listened. How? Because it was never about mercy," he murmured. "It was about love so desperate it forgot the rules." The moon rose higher, painting his face silver. The hunger beneath his skin quieted. We stood, side by side, as the last of the blades melted away. The ravine below was dark, but far in its depths something moved, a flicker of red light like an eye-opening. Runa watched it too, her expression grim. "The dead heard your confession," she said. "Now it knows the shape of your hearts." "And that means?" I asked. "It means," Runa said, turning toward the path that wound deeper into the mountains. "The next cut won't be from metal. It will be from choice." The bridge of blades ended where the world remembered fire. We climbed until the trees thinned into charcoal spires, and the snow carried black seeds of ash that did not melt on my tongue. The mountain's face changed, less forest, more bone. Ridges rose like knuckles scraped raw. Wind slid along them with the hush of a temple where no one prays anymore. Runa walked ahead with the certainty of old grief. Dorian kept pace beside her, his hand near his knife, as if a blade might argue with the sky and win. Kael moved like a man learning his body again. The red under his skin pulsed softer now, the gold in his eyes steady enough to read by. Every few steps his fingers brushed mine. A question, a proof, a promise, and each time I let our hands catch. We didn't speak. The path did not like words wasted. The last rise gave way to a basin high as breath, wide as judgment. A ring of ash trees stood there, stripped to pale columns, their branches stitched with old prayer tags that stirred without wind. In the center, a circle of soot packed hard as stone, and a slab of obsidian the size of a wolf's sled, veined with slag that looked like frozen lightning. "The sanctuary of ash," Runa said softly. where the moon keeps a ledger for wolves too stubborn to die right. Dorian glanced at me, then at Kael. We shouldn't linger. We should kneel, Runa corrected. We entered the ring. The air changed temperature the way blood changes its mind. My lungs drew in night and tasted salt, smoke, and something bright like bitten metal. On the obsidian, the slag veins quickened, glowing from ember to flame, to a white that wasn't light so much as the memory of it. Runa set her beads on the slab. They did not stop moving. Names, she said. Kael Varyn, he answered. Voice low, steady, each syllable a nail hammered into wood. Lyra Hale, I said. The mark at my throat warmed like a mouth closed on it. Runa's gaze was a knife dipped in wine. You will both say them again, we obeyed. The glow steadied, as if the sanctuary had just opened its eyes. Debt comes to hear, Runa told the empty air. And those who owe come to be heard. The first cut has been made, truth on the bridge. The second is now, choice before flame. The third will follow, consequence in the bone. She glanced at me. Stand in the soot. I stepped into the circle. The ash packed under my boots did not take my weight so much as weigh me back. Kael joined me. The world narrowed to our breaths and the faint click of Dorian's jaw, a sound he made when he wished to grind danger into powder. Runa opened her palm over the obsidian. A thin line along her lifeline parted cleanly, offering a drop of bright red to the stone. It hissed and became smoke. Sanctuary, she said, balance this thing that wears the hunger of a hole. Let it speak, that we may know the shape of what we refuse. We waited. The ash trees exhaled and made no sound doing it. The prayer tags looked one direction, then the other, as if deciding which wolf would be easiest to eat. The glow in the slab gathered itself into a single seam, then unzipped, not light lack. A thin vertical absence stood on the stone, door-shaped and wrong. It tilted, listening, and the ring of trees leaned as if to hear it better. I came. The hollow purred, the sound like soot stirred by a sigh. I counted. I kept. You stole, I said, before fear could tell me how bad an idea that was. I obeyed, it corrected, almost kindly. A law older than teeth. What is called must be paid. Your throat wrote the summons. Your bond signed? Runa's voice stayed level. Name your price so we can laugh at it properly. Life for soul. We heard that song, she said. We didn't dance. Then a heart for a heart, it mused. Or a first cry for a first howl? The word struck bone. I felt Kael sway. I caught his wrist. He didn't look at me, but the tendons under my fingers announced his anger like a drum. No, he said, quiet and final. You won't touch what hasn't even drawn breath. The hollow laughed like frost taking a window. Then touch her instead, it offered. Give me the Luna's shadow. She will live bright as snow and never again know the shape of his name. The air tilted. For a moment I could see it. Clean, painless blankness where Kael resided. No more waking to his scent in the cold. No more standing in the doorway to feel the house listen for his footfall. A life unburdened by grief because it forgot love. I don't know if I made a sound, but Kael snapped toward me as if I had been struck. Don't look at it, he said. Don't even give it your eyes. Runa's beads clattered once. Clever, she said to the absence. Memory's a gentler knife, but not sharp enough. She raised her head, as if addressing the moon through the roof of night. Sanctuary, weigh the offers. The ash beneath us shifted and became a scale, subtle. Nothing moved. Everything moved. Heat came up through my boots and into my knees, my blood agreeing to be counted. Above the slab, the vertical absence fluttered in a wind that wasn't a wind at all, as if embarrassed to be judged in public. Dorian took one slow step to the edge of the circle. If the price must be paid, he said to Runa, it should be mine. No, Kael and I said together. Dorian didn't look at us. The pack needs its alpha, he said. It does not need its beta more than it needs a future that isn't haunted. Runa's gaze softened, briefly, like a blade wiped clean before more work. Brave, she said. Useless, she added, kinder for stripping the hope clean. It wants leverage, not a gift. She gestured to Kael. It wants the wolf the moon made king, or the Luna who taught him to come when she called. The scale held steady. The absence hummed a lullaby for the dead. Then I make a third offer, I said, stepping forward until the soot cuffed my boots in gray. Not life. Not shadow. Name. The ring listened. The void doesn't drink blood, I went on, feeling the words before I understood them. It drinks story. Kael Varyn is a story the forest writes by itself. I gestured to the pale trees, their bark still scored with Kael from the clearing. That's why it wants him. So I will give it a different name. I will take his into me. Kael's head snapped toward me. Lyra... Hush, Runa breathed, as if any word might knock this balance sideways. I will be the threshold, I said to the absence. I will carry his name on my bones, his titles in my mouth, his teeth in my heart. He will be free of them. You can follow me, the scale shivered. The ash around my ankles thickened, as if testing the weight of the idea. The absence leaned, delighted. Bold, it breathed. Make the Luna the king. Make the king a boy with no crown and no wolves. You think that saves him? You would hollow him and call it salvation. I think it guts you, I said. You want a legend fat with fear. I'll starve you on stubbornness and spite. Dorian's mouth twitched. Almost approval. Kael's hand found mine. You won't carry me, he said, eyes gold and iron both. We carry each other, or we lie down and let the snow have us. The absence flickered in impatience. Choose. Dawn counts. Runa's bead stilled. She looked from me to Kael and then at the slab, her old seer's eyes reflecting back the light that wasn't light. Sanctuary, she said. Open the old rite. The obsidian cracked in a perfect circle. From it rose heat that smelled like blackened rosemary and the inside of a smith's mouth. The ash trees bent and made an arch. The prayer tags went still, every scrap of paper listening like wolves before a kill. What rite? I asked, though some part of me already knew. The weighing of names, Runa said. A Luna can shoulder an Alpha's name for one night and one blood price. If she stands and does not break, the debt shifts to her and becomes wage, not tribute. She pays by living. Every day a coin. Every grief a tithe. The void hates wages. It cannot count slow. And the blood price? Dorian asked. Runa looked at my throat. Mark to mark. The sanctuary's heat rose in a lump under my tongue. I tasted copper. Do it, I said. Kael stepped between Runa and me. No, Kael, I said, and the scold in my voice made the old wolf inside him blink. You told me on the bridge. The blades turn to snow if the bond is true. Then let it be true. Let me carry your name until dawn. We get you past the hunger. After that, take it back and we count slow together. His jaw worked. Fury and love are cousins. Both make the mouth forget how to shape restraint. If you break, I won't, I said, and the bond hummed like a taut bowstring pulled to the cheek. And if I do, follow the sound of me falling and catch it. He stared at me for a long time, and then nodded once. The way a king nods when the decision is both madness and the only road left. He turned to Runa. Explain it. Runa moved like a woman who had been waiting to be asked. She lifted my hair, bearing the mark the bond burned onto me the day we chose each other. She unwrapped a narrow ribbon from around her wrist, a strip of skin-thin white leather inked with symbols so tight they looked like thread, and tied it above my pulse. Lean, she told me, and pressed my mouth to Kael's mark, hotter than mine, older, written not by ceremony but by life spent ruling and bleeding and standing when standing hurt. The scent of him, ice and pine, and the faint ghost of storm, rose and crowded the air. Repeat, she said. I am Lyra Hale. I whispered against his skin. And I am Kael Varyn, he answered. Against mine, Runa's knife flashed. I did not see it go in, only felt the heat of it carving an old letter into my mark. K, not like the common alphabet, but like the moon wrote it when wolves first grew tails. Kael hissed and did not move. Runa carved L into him, not the letter but the river, Blood answered. The sanctuary leaned close to smell it. The absence purred. Yes, it said, delighted. Bind yourselves cleverer. I will eat whatever holds. Runa ignored it. Now, she said. Give and take. Kael looked into me the way a man looks into a lake he is about to step onto in winter. Not for his reflection, but for the thickness of the ice. He pressed his brow to mine, our breaths mixing into one small weather. "Can you?" he asked, soft as marrow. "Yes," I said, and believed it. I opened. Names are not just sounds. They are rooms. I felt his. Doors, hallways, bone-deep places where authority slept curled like a dog. They came to my hands like reins. I took them and did not pull. I let them sit, heavy, right? When his name settled, the ash around my ankles rose and clasped my calves like cuffs. The world shuddered. My knees dipped and found their strength. "It's moving," Dorian said, quiet awe making him unclench his mouth. "She's carrying it." Kael staggered and then straightened, as if a yoke had slid from his shoulders and revealed the bruises beneath. The red under his skin dimmed further, a 6-star receding at last from horizon to almost night. The absence hissed between its teeth. "Wages," it sneered. "Slow, petty, small coins filling small jars." "Yes," Runa said, satisfied. "Come back tomorrow, Det. We will be poor and stubborn. You will starve." The sanctuary's glow thinned to a hard, clean line. The ash trees lifted. The prayer tags sighed. The scale under our boots leveled. "It is not dawn," the void warned, as if that were a reason not to be dismissed. "The night is long, and we are longer," I said, surprising myself with the certainty in my mouth. The absence flickered. Once. Twice. As if in laughter. Then drew itself thin as paper and slipped into the seam of obsidian. The slab cooled. The white in its veins folded down to coal and then to memory. Silence came like a blanket thrown and beaten all in the same gesture. The sanctuary exhaled us back into the cold. My legs shook. Kael caught my elbow and held me as if he expected the mountain to tilt again. "You did it," he said, wonder and anger and fear qualifying each other into something like reverence. "Moon, Lyra, you did it," I swallowed. The name settled into me like a live coal lodged under the sternum. Radiant, painful, right. When I breathed, the pack breathed back somewhere far away, answering out of habit. The world weighed me differently. Runa studied my face as if I had grown an extra set of eyes. "How heavy?" she asked. "Like a crown you swallow," I said. "Good." She picked up her beads. They started moving again, relieved to be beads and not a verdict. "We move before it thinks of another angle." Dorian shifted his weight. "If the Det hates wages," he said, "it will come for something quick. A raid, an accident, a bargain that smells like mercy. We should warn the pack." "We will," Runa said. "But not until we choose the last cut." My skin tightened. "The third?" "Consequence," she said simply. "There is always a third. The moon loves triptychs. You told a hard truth on the bridge. You made an impossible choice in the ash. Now the world will ask what you're willing to break to keep the first two from breaking you." "What does that mean?" Kael asked. Runa turned her face toward the basin's rim. Dawn was nowhere near, but something in the east had started to guess at it. "It means the Det will try to collect through other mouths." The ground under the ash ring trembled, small, then teeth on teacup audible. Dorian's head came up, wolf in his eyes. "Company," he said. 2, no, 3, running hard. They broke the rim's line like stones flung from a sling. 2 pack wolves in travel leathers, faces wind-burnt, eyes blown wide. And between them, gods, no, a boy scarcely 12 winters, limp as a coat on a peg except for his eyes, which were open and silvering wrong. They dragged him like he weighed nothing, which meant he weighed everything. "Help," one of the wolves cried, flinging the word like a torch into dry grass. "Rogues on the south run, something." He breathed a shadow. He started to... The wolf gulped air. "He's the baker's youngest. He didn't do anything. He just looked at the place where the river shadows bend and breathed, and it went into him." The boy's mouth opened. A thread of black came out and wrote itself in the air like smoke reading you. My lungs forgot how to be lungs. "Get him inside the ring," Runa commanded, already moving, staff raised. "Sanctuary owes us a courtesy while its stone is still warm." The wolves obeyed. The moment the boy's toes crossed the ash, the thread snapped like a bad violin string. He sagged. The wrong light in his eyes dimmed. The 2 wolves fell back, panting. One wiped his mouth with the back of his hand. "It's all over," he said, like fog you can hold. People are forgetting where to put their feet." Dorian's face had the set of a man who has decided to stand on a door that wants very much to swing open. "It's testing the fences," he said, looking for holes. Runa's gaze slid to me. "You wanted wages," she said gently. "This is the first payment," the boy coughed. Black smoke twitched and died in his breath. His eyes found me and then Kael. He blinked like it hurt. "My ma baked honey bread," he murmured, as if reciting a spell against darkness. She said if I ever saw the Alpha to give him the first slice." Kael knelt, a movement that once would have been easy and was now a declaration. He took the boy's cold hand. "I will eat it," he said, king soft. "Tell her I will come and take it warm." Something in the boy settled. The silver retreated from his eyes another inch. I felt the name in me answer the promise. A ribbon pulled through cloth, making the pattern hold. "Runa," I said, the weight of it all driving my voice low. "If I'm carrying his name until dawn, and the void is already pulling at the pack, what stops it from—" A horn cut me off. Not the bright call of a hunt, not warning. A funeral horn, blown wrong, notes warped as if a hand shook and could not stop. It came from the direction of home. Dorian swore, an old word that put splinters in the air. Kael's head raised, every line of him becoming a hook. The gold in his eyes did not flicker. It flamed. "Go," Runa told him, reading the burn. "Take the Luna and the boy and run. Dorian, with them. I'll close the sanctuary and follow with what stubbornness I have left." "What awaits us?" I asked. Runa's smile was thin and made of sorrow hammered flat. "The last cut," she said. "A choice the void thinks you can't make." Kael stood and turned to me. The hunger under his skin lay very still, as if waiting to be told whether it would live or die. "Can you bear it?" he asked, meaning the name and meaning the road and meaning everything. "Yes," I said, "because there is a point beyond fear where your mouth has only that word left." We moved. The ash trees opened and let us out like a throat swallowing. The basin fell behind, and the path braided itself under our feet without asking our permission. I held the boy on my back. He weighed almost nothing, which felt like an accusation. Dorian ranged ahead, a blade held low so its shine wouldn't give us away to anything watching from shadow. Kael ran at my side, not ahead, not behind. The place a mate runs when he intends to be the last thing between you and teeth. The horn sounded again, closer. And over it rose a sound that made my legs want to fail. Wolves crying the old cry when their king dies. "They think you're dead," I gasped. Again. The trees began to thin. The smell of our own chimneys reached for us. Wood smoke and wet wool, and the faint sweet of spice bread turned black at the edges. We broke from the last of the pines and saw the village bowl below. Roofs huddled under frost. Windows blinking with candles, the common green full of people in nightclothes, faces upturned and washed in the light of a fire that had no wood to feed it. It burned over the river like a city upside down. Flames where water should be, water where sky should be, reflection and thing confused. In the heart of that impossible bloom stood a woman with her hands in the fire, unburned and unblinking. Elder Maeve, the oldest midwife, the one who had cut every first cry loose for 20 winters. Her mouth moved. The crowd didn't hear words, but my mark did. The bond did. The name in me did. First cry for first howl. The void didn't need to take a child. Not if it could compel someone who made children breathe to stop. Runa had said other mouths. "Kael," I whispered. My voice suddenly not mine but the road's. It wants her hands. It will make her close every throat it once opened unless we pay another way, he finished, reading the line 2 words ahead of me. The horn cried a third time and broke in the middle, as if lung and metal both had decided enough. The crowd had begun to sway the way wheat sways when the sky has made a god out of wind. Kael took my hand and pulled me down the slope, feet sliding, breath turning to iron in my mouth. The boy clung and did not slow me. At the edge of the green, Dorian peeled away, barking orders that sounded like the old days. Lines, shields, ash, salt, water, eyes on me. Our people move because the body remembers drills even when the mind is made of fear. We plunged through them like a spear finding its work. Elder Maeve turned her face toward us without moving her hands. Her eyes were unmade. No iris, no pupil, just the flat reflection of fire. Her voice poured out and coated the green in honey that would harden to amber if we let it. Debt, she said in a voice that wasn't hers and too many others around it. One life for no soul, I said, stepping into the river of flame. It did not burn me. The name on my bones made room where there was none. We pay by living, Maeve's head cocked. Small coins. Count them, I said, and reached for her wrists. Heat took my skin. Not heat, history. Every baby she had pulled into air stroked my palms. Every mother's cry. Every prayer muttered into hair still wet with womb slick. First cry. The void wanted to choke a village with history so it could eat our future. Kael, I said, not turning. Because if I looked away, the river would become water again and drown me differently. Take her oath, he understood. He stepped into the fire beside me. The hunger under his skin rose like a snake made of ash and curled around his spine. The gold in his eyes sharpened. He lifted his hand and placed it over Maeve's heart. By the name I gave, and the name she carries, he said, my name in him, his name in me, the bond a wire pulled hot. No hand in Bloodmoon closes what it once opened. The void hissed. It tried to pull back through her fingers, through her wrists, through the lines of her old veins. The river fire dimmed and flared, indecisive, the way a liar's mouth does when asked for dates. Wages, it spat, disgusted, failing to disguise its fear. Slow, boring. Stay bored, I said, tightening my grip. Maeve blinked. Pupils swam back into her eyes like fish who had been spooked by nets. She sobbed once and folded around her own hands. The river fire stuttered and became river again, cold and honest. The reflection of the burning village overhead went out as if someone had pinched a candle in the sky. The crowd wavered, then made a sound I have never heard. Relief that hurt. It lifted at the edges and fell back onto itself like water failing to crest. The baker shoved through bodies and tore the boy from my back and thanked gods he didn't believe in and wept into hair that smelled of wood smoke and yeast. Somewhere, a dog barked at nothing until that nothing remembered it wasn't allowed to stand on our green. Kael held Elder Maeve upright. She looked at him, then at me, and recognition returned with color to her wrinkled face. Oh, she said, voice raw with having had another throat sewn into it. You two look like you've been arguing with Winter. Winter argued first, I said, half laughing and too tired to hold it. Runa arrived then. No one saw her come. But suddenly she was there, a bead between fingers, breath steady. She nodded once at the river, once at Maeve, once at me, last at Kael. You paid, she said. It wasn't a question. For now, Dorian said, eyes cutting over the green, counting heads, counting threats. It will ask again. And we will answer again, Runa said. Until dawn. After that, the terms change. She squinted east, where the dark had lifted one finger to show what color the day intended to be, if we reach it. A small hand tugged my sleeve. The baker's boy, eyes clear now, held up something wrapped in cloth. My ma said, he whispered, shy and dignified both, to give the Alpha the first slice. Kael smiled like a wound that had decided to make a second career of being a mouth. He took the bread, broke it, and handed half to me. I bit, honey and heat. Something in my chest unknotted and cried, which is sometimes the same thing. The crowd breathed with us. Then the horn blew a fourth time. Flat, far wrong, and the gate tore open at the edge of the green. Not a door. A gate, 2 fence posts of night with a crossbar full of counting. It didn't form so much as reveal itself, like a bruise you only feel when someone presses hard in the right place. Through it walked shapes that had learned how to offend silhouettes. Wolves too long in the leg, men with heads 1 notch to the left of where skulls belong. They moved like decisions pretending to be bodies. The void did not speak out loud. It did not need to. The gate said enough. Runa's head tipped to one side. The last cut comes early, she murmured. It wants it public. What cut? I asked, though my bones were already answering. The kind where you must decide. she said. Who dies to keep the rest? A low, pained sound rolled through our people. Wolves and men, mothers and sons. Kael's hand closed on mine so tight our bones remembered they had been made for holding, not breaking. The gate widened. The knot wolves fanned. And beyond them I saw something worse. The dark suggesting a road down which only one of us could run fast enough to live. A bargain shaped like a path, a trap shaped like mercy. Choose. The hole in the world did not say and said anyway. I lifted my chin. The name in me burned bright as falling iron. The bond hummed, near breaking, near singing. Kael turned and put his forehead against mine. The way we steady each other when the ground remembers it can leave. Lyra, he said, and the last word of my name sounded like the part of night just before day splits it. We will not pick a child. No, I said. We will not pick a mother. No. He smiled with the corner of his mouth that only shows when he has already made the impossible decision and is now seeing if I will make it with him. Then we pick us. I breathed in once, let it out, and answered the only way I know how when asked to step into fire. Together. We turned to the gate, to the knot wolves wearing debts like collars, to the night that had decided to grow teeth and call it law. Runa's bead slid between her fingers, fast enough to sting. Dorian raised his blade and angled it down. Old habit, don't blind your allies with your courage, dawn. Tease the edges of the east. The last cut waited. With its mouth open, the horn's echo hadn't yet faded when the first shadow crossed the green. The night broke open like a wound, spilling creatures that shouldn't exist. Not wolves, not men, but something caught between, with bones bending the wrong way and mouths that smiled before they opened. They came crawling through the gate, slick with black light, each step melting frost to steam. The pack formed instinctively, old habits born from wars and winters long past. Shields of muscle and fur, growls vibrating low through the air like thunder remembering how to start a storm. But even as we braced, I felt the bond inside me tighten, a living rope straining under too much pull. Kael's name still glowed in my chest, a coal refusing to cool, and the void tugged on it, whispering, one last cut. Runa's voice sliced through the chaos. Hold the line. Remember, these aren't beasts. They are bargains wearing skin. Her staff hit the frozen ground, and the ash from the sanctuary answered, blooming into rings of silver fire. The first shadow hit that ring and screamed without sound, its form breaking like glass underwater, but 3 more followed, unfazed, crawling over the ash fire like it was only memory. Kael moved before anyone else. The hunger beneath his skin, the one we had fought all night to quiet, rose like a tide, furious, unstoppable. Gold light burned in his eyes, and behind it, something older than language. He shifted mid-step, bones cracking, fur erupting in streaks of silver and shadow. The wolf he became wasn't the one he'd been before he died. This one was rawer, leaner, forged in the furnace between life and the void. The crowd gasped, some in awe, others in fear. But to me he was still Kael. My Kael I followed. The name inside me answered his howl, rising from my chest, splitting my throat. The sound that left me wasn't human. It wasn't meant to be. It was the bond, pure and burning, pulled into the air like lightning through glass. The wolves of the pack caught it, howling back in a ripple of silver breath, every voice joining ours until the night trembled. The void recoiled. The knot wolves paused mid-crawl, their shapes flickering, like they suddenly remembered they weren't supposed to exist in this kind of light. But one didn't stop. The biggest, the first that had stepped through the gate. It wasn't just wearing a bargain. It was one. The mark of the Bloodstone glowed in the hollow of its chest, the same crimson sigil that had once sealed Kael's death. It smiled at me through a face half-formed from smoke. You brought him back, it said, voice layered with echoes. You thought the moon would bless what the void had already claimed. Kael growled low, circling. The creature tilted its head. Do you know what happens when a wolf howls with a heart that belongs to 2 realms? When his Luna carries his name but not his death. I swallowed, every muscle in my body screaming. We survive. The creature laughed, a dry, rattling sound that made frost peel from the ground. Survive? You've only delayed the counting. Every howl you've shared, every breath you've borrowed adds to the tally. Kael lunged. The impact shook the ground. Claws met smoke, jaws met shadow. They crashed into the river, water erupting into shards of light. For a moment, Kael's wolf form shone bright enough to burn through the black. But the creature reformed. Wrapping around him like a cloak, he howled. And I felt it tear through the bond, raw pain, desperate, primal. Runa's voice carried from behind me. Lyra, the name, he's losing it. He can't fight while it's bound to you. I staggered back, the realization slamming through me. The bond that saved him was now a chain. The void's laughter filled the air. Yes, one must die for the other to live. That was always the rule. Choose. Kael's eyes, golden and wild, found mine through the chaos. For a moment, the wolf faded, and the man looked back at me. Lyra, end it. No. He struggled, pinned beneath the creature, his claws slashing through water and smoke alike. It's feeding on me, on us. If you sever the name, it takes me. If you keep it, I lose you anyway, I whispered. Then let me go as Alpha, he said, voice cracking. Not as debt, the void hissed. Yes, Luna, choose your howl. The world narrowed to 2 heartbeats, his and mine. One fading, one fighting to stay. The dagger at my hip felt heavier than any sword. Runa's old voice echoed in my head, every truth sharper than the last. I stepped into the river. Cold bit my legs, climbed to my knees, my chest. The mark at my throat burned with his name, Kael Varyn. I raised the dagger. He stilled beneath the creature. His eyes softened, the gold flickering. I'll find you again, he said, and it wasn't a promise. It was prophecy. I drove the blade into my own mark. The world screamed. Light burst from my throat, from the river, from the sky itself. Every rune, every mark, every shadow recoiled as if the moon had torn its veil open. The creature shrieked, the sound of a debt denied, and split apart, unraveling into 1,000 ribbons of black that vanished into mist. Kael's body collapsed into the river, limp but free. I fell to my knees beside him, choking on light and blood. The name burned as it left me, not gone, but shared, diffused into every breath of the pack. The bond didn't die. It multiplied. Kael coughed once, then again, dragging air into lungs that had forgotten how to want it. When his eyes opened, they were pure gold. No red, no shadow. He reached for me. Lyra, I smiled through tears. You're home. He pulled me close, our foreheads touching, our breaths one again. You broke every law of gods and wolves to bring me back. Then they can make new ones, I whispered. Runa approached, staff glowing faintly in the dying moonlight. The dawn comes, she said. The debt has been paid, not in death but in defiance. The void will sleep until the next fool loves this hard. I laughed, soft and shaking. Then let it sleep long. Kael's hand brushed the mark on my neck, now a scar shaped like a crescent and a claw. What happens now? He asked. Runa smiled faintly. Now you live. That's the hardest part. The sun began to bleed over the horizon, washing the village in color. The pack howled. First one, then all. Not in mourning this time, but in victory. A sound that split the night and crowned the dawn. Kael and I stood together, soaked, shaking, alive, and when the last echo faded, he turned to me and said, You called me back once with your cry. Lyra, now promise me this. When the world goes quiet again, you'll keep calling. I took his hand, threading my fingers through his. Always. The first light of morning broke across his face, and for the first time since the Bloodstone burned, he smiled. No crown, no curse. Just a wolf and a woman who had dared to challenge death. The void was gone. The debt erased. And as the pack howled again, for love, for survival, for what we had taken back from the dark, I realized something. He wasn't the one who'd been brought back from death. We both were.